Hi, I'm Dave Epstein. Welcome to this edition of Growing Wisdom. Today we're talking about growing in these handy little sacks. So one of the things that's really caught on over the past several years is growing in these bendable, reusable sacks. And there's all sorts of different varieties out there. Today we've got this jar-de-sac. This, I think, comes from the word jardin in French, is garden, and sac obviously is the sacks. Now, as you're working with any of these reusable containers, you want to be sure you put in really good soil. Remember, it's not like your garden where there's a lot of soil. These are limited space, so you want to be sure there's lots of nutrients. And I would also continue to feed them with a liquid fertilizer throughout the growing season. I make up my own soil. We've got in here some compost. I've got some topsoil. I add in a little bit of this potting mix, which has some of the perlite or vermiculite, depending on your particular type of potting mix. And that keeps the soil nice and loose. I've also added in, perhaps you can see, I've added in a little bit of just builder's sand. So it's a little bit of a coarser sand, and that helps with drainage as well. I just personally find that the containers being outside, if we get heavy rain, that it won't flood too much and they won't stay too wet. Now, the nice thing about these containers, as is the case with many of the containers, is they are porous, so you can have airflow right through them, and that actually helps prevent these from getting too wet. So you don't need to worry quite as much about water when you're working with these as you would with some of the other containers that we have back there that are plastic that really hold on to the water. So let's get the soil mixed up. Notice this has a lot of peat in it, and I don't necessarily like all of that just for the container, so that's why I've added in some of the compost and other material. I just find that that makes a nice mix, really balanced. We've got these two containers here, and they're called jar-de-sacs. And I'm going to choose to use the larger one in terms of depth for the basil. I thought maybe we'd work with this one, but I'm a little concerned it's too shallow. So you might use this for something like lettuces or microgreens. That would work well in here. Anything which has very shallow roots. Since some of the basil roots could go a little bit deeply, this might just be too shallow for this, but I think this particular sack will work well. So this is Sweet Dan, that's the name of this particular basil. We'll just tease the roots there on the bottom and get this in the container. Now, you don't want to plant basil any deeper than it was in the pot, otherwise it can what's called damp off, or basically where the stem meets the soil it can fall over. So there's one basil in there. I like this little globe basil. This is called spicy globe basil, so we'll put that in as well. I like to leave my tags in just so I can see what I'm doing. And I've got another one here. I'm going to put in the purple basil just to add a little bit of color. That third one's not going to fit, which is fine. We'll put it in a different container at some point. You can see all those nice roots there. So as you can see, these reusable garden sacks are really great for growing things. I think these plants will do quite well. Remember, they still need water. They still need to be placed in plenty of sunshine. Deeper ones for things that have deeper roots. Shallower ones, especially if you want to do some microgreens or some lettuces, which never really get deep roots. And we've used these all over the garden, different types, and I find they really work well. You can even grow things like tomatoes, cucumbers, as well as zucchini in the larger sacks. For Growing Wisdom, I'm Dave Epstein.